Okay, so now I'm going to go into,
I have a question on the
Yeah.
first one, the first Indian picture, when
Yeah.
you took the background off. How did you do that? Select all
Well,
the background and then work with that part of it?
no, what I did is I selected, when I try to blur it out, or when I actually
When you
remove the background.
totally eliminated the people in the
Okay,
background.
what I did is I selected the Indian, and then I had to go in and get those little feathers in it to make sure those were in there and nothing was around. And it's hours of work. It's very tedious,
Okay,
but
that's what I was wondering, if you had a simple way to.
no. And anything,
Fingers and whatever else.
Abracadabra.
I think Nancy will verify this for me. There is no simple way.
There is no.
Sometimes yelling rain or fire or tornado will clear the background out.
Adobe every year comes out with a new selection tool. It's gonna be the greatest. And the newest version had something, but it's still a lot of work to get. If your background is busy and similar colors to your subject, you gotta invest a.
So, and how do you use that? Like Photoshop and just blow
I-
it up and select each little?
Well, I do a variety of different techniques. Sometimes I'll go into channels and try to see if I get enough because if you go into channels, that's like having a mask. That's like having a mask. It is a mask. It's black, white, and and blue. Yeah. So you can just select the channel that gives you the most contrast and start using that as your mask and work from there. I found that the Adobe masking, I don't have a lot of luck with that. I sort of gave up on that, and I'll use a quick select tool, but I find it's just as much work to try to mask it out with that Adobe masking tool as it is for me to just turn it to black and white and just get it out. I don't know, I think when they show you all this, they show you like the simplest pictures with good contrast, and you'd say, oh wow, that looks great, you could do that. I can't. That's all I can say is I can't, and I think I'm decent with Photoshop, and I can't do it, so.
One way you can also do it, a quick select,
Yeah.
and I take it into the, I hit Q for, what's the name of it?
Quick mask.
And paint with black and white to mask it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because the quick mask, you can soften the edges and do all of that fussing with it, but it still doesn't capture all of it. It's still that hand painting time.
Yeah, it's still hand painting, and you have to really love to edit. I personally do, I know Nancy does. To me, that's part of the artistic expression, is to do that stuff. A lot of people don't have the patience and don't really want to, and that's fine. But you just have to realize that that's what it's going to entail. But I have some simpler composition pictures that I'm going to show you some techniques that I use. One of the things to remember is that what you're trying to really do is de-emphasize the background, even if you're not trying to wipe it out completely. And if you think about it, if colors are darker, they seem to push further back. If colors are brighter, or the subject is brighter, it puts them up front. It's almost pretty much what your eye sees too. So if the background is blurred, it also pushes it back and pushes your object up front. And same thing with colors. If you desaturate a color, it will also do the same thing. If you take some of the saturation, you don't want to take all of it out because you don't want a black and white, unless you're doing for an effect. You don't want a black and white picture and a colored subject. But sometimes you can take some of the saturation out of, like if you have green leaves, sometimes if you take some of that yellow out, it'll dim the leaves enough to where your subject will pop out from the leaves. And I do that a lot on my pictures. So I'm going to go into, all right, let me find my pictures here. I'm going to work from the easiest to the more skilled. Oops. I'm going to do this again. I didn't want to open it in. Sure. Okay, so here is a picture that I took at a zoo, at probably Lowry Park Zoo, some years ago. And you got two little giraffes interacting with each other, and it's sort of a really blah picture, but it was a fun picture of the giraffes. So, with all of this stuff here, you know, you could crop it, and what I did do is I cropped it in close. And I cropped it in to get the headshot only, and that way I didn't have to fuss too much with the background. I could have also taken this branch out, which I didn't right here, but just I would if I was actually working the picture, take that branch out. And then what I did, so this is what I started out with just a crop. And then this is what I started out with once I brought it into, once I finished it. So it's this, oops, sorry. It's this, and then this. Subtle, but it's a difference. It's a big difference when you start looking at it. And how did I do that? I had given some training, I guess a couple of months ago, on the NIC products. So this will reinforce you a little bit on what the NIC products does and how I work with them. So I'm going to come here to the background. Now with the NIC products, I always do everything on a separate layer, but with NIC you don't have to because it gives you its own layer. It'll give you the layer when you use it. So I'm going to go over here to Filter, NIC, and I'm going to go into Color Effects Pro. Okay, so I'm going to have to put this down because I can't work with both. So the first thing I did was I went into tonal contrast. So I like tonal contrast because it's a good way of adding detail. It just puts it right up there. So here's, I always open, well, let me go back here again. When I go into tonal contrast, there's these little folders here. I always click on the folders so that it opens up a whole bunch of different views of it. You know, and you can click through it and see all the different stuff it can give you, okay? This is just the basic. Sometimes it's neutral and sometimes it's just a basic change. This is a little stronger, and I sort of like that on these giraffes because they weren't real sharp to begin with. But now, if you notice, I sharpened up my leaves too much, which I don't want that sharp. I only want them sharp. So the nice thing about the NIC programs is if you come over here, you have something called control points. And the control points will make you, they're either plus or minus. So you can either put it where you want the effect and put it where you don't want the effect. And if you open this up, if you just click on here, see that? You have an opacity slider which you can play with to maybe make the effect a little bit less or you know, change the opacity of the effect itself. So in this case, I want to keep the giraffe sharp, but I don't want the sharpness on these leaves because I'm trying to push back the leaves so that the giraffes stick out. So what I'll do is I'll just go in here with the control points and just click away. The NIC program, they're designed, these control points look at shades of colors, okay? So I'm hitting on the pink, I'm hitting on the green, and so it's picking up the green and it's minusing, I'm taking out the effect from the green. If you go over here, this almost looks like a mask here. It is actually a mask, but you can see that these are black, so this whole area that's black, the effect isn't applying. This is grayed, so it's applying halfway. So I need to go back over to the plus. Let me come out of here and just take the plus and then click on the giraffe and just okay. If you hit Alt, and go on that little dot, it'll take it and you don't have to keep on going back in. And this is adding detail to the giraffe's face. You can sort of see them starting to pop right out here. And if you go here, you see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's two ways I use it. It depends on how many changes I'm making and how exact I want to be. You can if you add the filter, screen is a little bit too, okay, here, if I add the filter, okay, now that's popped in there. Now I can go into the next. If you don't hit add filter, you're going to lose this as soon as you go into your next adjustment. But you don't have to. You can either click this, say OK, and it'll put on a separate layer, and then come back in and do this again. And that way, if you don't like something, it's easier to just throw it out later on. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it on this layer. And I'm going to go to another effect that I like. I have my favorites all marked, so the next thing I like a lot is classical soft focus. And I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. And you see you have different effects. This is soft, and this is softer. And this is diffusion and strong diffusion. They're used mostly on portraits and weddings, but I like it for my animals too. So I'm going to go into strong soft focus. And now you see the whole thing is soft, and I don't want my giraffe soft. So I'm going to do just the opposite of what I did on the tonal thing. I'm going to come in here and hit minus for the giraffe. And then put alt, hit alt. I guess it's option on a Mac and alt on a Windows program. And try to pick up. Oops, I'm hitting shift. That's why it's not working. Sorry about that. You can control the size here so you don't get out of line.